Hi, this is Dan Korver, pastor here at Dalton Hill Baptist Church. We're a small Baptist church located in Owasso, Oklahoma. We're small enough to know you, but we're big enough to serve you and for you to serve as well. Our vision is to rescue, restore, and return to service. Rescue a non-believer or a believer who has been hurt or is lost, restoring them to Christ in fellowship with other believers with the desire that they in turn will help others along their way.
As we've been continuing our study on heroes and villains, I also wanted to start looking a little bit at the miracles of Jesus. How many direct miracles are mentioned in the Gospels? By name, 35. Now there's others that he would say he healed all the sick, or he cast out demons. There's a lot of where he had so many more, but there's 35 directly mentioned. How many do you have mentioned in John? 7. The reason there's 7 is John just takes those 7 to prove that Jesus is the Son of God. That's why when I'm the light, he'd heal a blind man. I'm the resurrection, he'd heal Lazarus, and so on. So each one has a different theme, and they're wanting to support the miracles to support the theme of which they're talking about. And since I thought what I could do is we could take 3 of the miracles that also talk about individuals and heroes and villains. Now what happens is only one is even named by name. But all 3 of those miracles we know very well. And so it's interesting when you look at it, we hear about someone and we can tell the story, and yet their name was never given in Scripture. We'll have to wait until a future date to find out who they are, which I'm sure we will. But if you want the title, let's just do the words, the walk, and work of faith. Words, walk, and work of faith. Each one will be 3 different ones. The first one will be in Luke chapter 7. It's given in Luke 7 and also in Matthew 8, but we'll just look at Luke 7 for this one. And you have to get the background. I think it's interesting, or actually, so for the background, if you notice back in chapter 6, you'll see the background. Because it's important, because when you see in chapter 1, it said when he completed all his discourse. So what was he talking about? In chapter 7, you'll notice in verse 44 of chapter 6 of Luke, it says, each tree is known for its fruit. So you want to know, you look at what somebody is, you look at their fruit. They can say a lot of things, but you look at their fruit. You also, if you notice in verse 48 and 49, he talks about what you're a builder, what are you building on? Are you building on the rock and it's going to stand when the storms come? Or are you building on the sand? Now that's the background. Then when you come to this chapter, the first one, and it's basically the divine placement or the words of faith. Look at the centurion. By the way, we're never told his name. Centurion. If you know, the centurion would then be a Roman, a Gentile soldier who is over 100 men. That's what his responsibility is. And so notice then what happens he's in Capernaum, which would be right, on the coast of Galilee. And notice in verse 2, it says, a certain centurion's slave, Matthew will say it's actually a boy, we're not told that here, who was highly regarded by him. So the centurion really has a high regard for this slave that he has, this boy, who was sick and was about to die. Alrighty, so here you have him. Now notice the description of him, of the centurion now. Notice in verse 3. When he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders to ask him to come and save his slave. Now, Matthew doesn't tell you that he asked the Jewish leaders to go. Why would he ask the Jewish leaders instead of just doing it himself?
To persuade Jesus.
Okay, is he a Gentile? Does he maybe think that Jesus wouldn't do something if he's, okay, that's possible? Very possible. It's important, too, to recognize Jesus cares for Jew, he cares for Gentile, he cares for slave, and he cares for free. But notice what also it says, it's interesting, when they had come to Jesus, they earnestly entreated him, saying, this is the Jewish leaders, he is worthy for you to grant this to him. You know, he's worthy. It's interesting because he doesn't feel that way about himself, but they do. But how many times do you and I go to the Lord for asking for things, we need things, and God, you owe this to me? Whether we think about it, some people do. It's incorrect, but some people do. So notice, I think it's interesting, the reasoning that they have. He loves our nation, and he has helped build the synagogue. He's done a lot of great things for us. And therefore, you need to heal him, the slave. But notice when you look at it, the display of faith on the centurion's part. Notice in verse 6, Jesus starts on his way with them, and when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sends friends, saying to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself further. I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof. For this reason, I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. Same word. He says, I'm not worthy, and the Jewish leaders say what?
He is.
He is worthy. The centurion has a proper view of himself. And I think it's important. We go in Hebrews 4, we go to Jesus to receive grace and mercy. He resists the proud. So notice then what he says, for I too am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and he goes. And to another, come, and he comes. And to my slave, do this, and he does it. That's interesting what he's saying then. Jesus, you have authority, and you can speak. By the way, did Jesus ever make it to the home? No. So what kind of faith is he saying about Jesus? You have power to heal from a distance. We do that all the time. How many of us are praying for people all over the world for Jesus to do something? The centurion has the same faith. I don't deserve it. They may think I do, but I don't. I ask for grace and mercy. You have authority. You don't even have to come here. You can do it by just speaking. It's interesting what Jesus says then. And notice he says, now when Jesus heard this, he marveled at him and turned and said to the multitude that was following him, I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great faith. Quite a rebuke, isn't it? Boy, hey, I've been around you guys all this time, and here's more faith over here among this Gentile than among all of you. Notice what he says. When those had been sent home, returned house, they found the slave was in good health. He heals, and they turned and they left. They had no proof, did they? They simply had the word of Jesus. And so that's why I said I think it's interesting when you think about it, just the divine placement. He recognizes God's place and he recognizes his, Jesus' place, but also just the words of faith. How many of us take the words of God and plead the words of faith and we believe them, what's in the Word of God? I think it's important. I think a lot of us are like doubting Thomas, right? Only when I can see it, I can feel it. So let me ask you some questions. Which response best represents you and me? The Jewish leaders or the centurion? You think about it. I'm not worthy. I ask for grace and you don't even need to come. Or I've done all these great things and I am worthy and you ought to do it for me. And obviously we've already said Jesus heals based on the faith. By the way, did the slave boy have anything to do with his healing? No. It's the faith of his master. It's important for us too to recognize sometimes it's our faith, but oftentimes it's the faith of other individuals. And what we need to look at it. Jesus has power over distance. So the first one, the divine placement, notice this, the words of faith. It's the words of faith he takes and believes. We have words, or we believe in the words of Jesus that we see. The second one will be over, it's mentioned 3 times in Scripture, 3 different places. It's all the same miracle. But this time he is mentioned. Look over in Mark chapter 5. And for the setting, you'll have to go back to chapter 3 of Mark. Mark chapter 5. Let's first turn back to chapter 3. Well, we'll do that in a minute. Let's go to Mark 5 first. It's talking about the divine delay, or the walk of faith. Divine delay, or the walk of faith. This is Jairus' daughter. We find out she's 12. It's his only daughter. And notice then in verse 21 and so on, you're going to find the setting that you have. It's when he had crossed over, remember, on the sea, over again in the boat to the multitude on the other side, he stayed in the seashore, and one of the synagogue officials named Jairus came up to him upon seeing him and fell at his feet. Now, to be a synagogue official would mean what? In our vernacular, for our kind of, it's not a direct comparison, but you could say almost like he'd be almost like an elder, or be something like that in the church. So a prominent leader. So a prominent leader in the synagogue at Capernaum. And here he is. And notice his entreaty. And I think it's interesting. Notice it says it's repeated, and he prostrates himself. He falls down. Can you imagine you are there and there's a huge multitude, and all of a sudden one of the big religious leaders comes up and does what? I mean, it's the proper thing to do, but how many prominent civil leaders, religious leaders would come up and fall down before Jesus and plead their case? I think most of the time this is what would happen. He doesn't barter. He doesn't say, you do me a favor and I'll make it easier for you. How many of us have ever tried to barter with God? He doesn't negotiate. Hey Jesus, I hear you're having some trouble with the religious leaders in Jerusalem. I'll make a few phone calls to help you out if you'll just do this. We have a lot of that going on too, don't we? He doesn't make any excuses. You know, I could have taken her to the doctor earlier, but I've been real busy doing religious work and I couldn't do it. No, he didn't do any of that. He simply, and it's repeated, he falls down, prostrates himself, and just asks for grace and mercy. He doesn't care what anybody else around is thinking or anything else. He cares about his daughter. Now when you think about that, so here he is, and so you keep reading. He entreats him, and he treated him, in verse 23, he entreated him, Jesus, earnestly saying, my little daughter is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her, that she may live. And he went off with him, and a great multitude was following him and pressing in on him. Okay, so who's leading the way? Jairus is leading the way, and Jesus is going with them, and there's a huge multitude. Now, I want you to think about, let's just divide our congregation in two people here, two groups. You are over here are Jairus and his family, Jairus group. You over here are then going to be the woman with the issue of blood. Now, when you think about this, she's at the point of death. Jesus is following you. And people are pressing all over. How earnest are you to be to get to Jesus, to get him there? Okay? That's why I said a divine delay. How would you feel about this? The walk of faith. So notice we're going to get sidetracked. And notice what happens then. Notice in verse 35, which I call the distinctive touch, the work of faith. Notice we're never told who this lady is. And how would you be feeling about now if you're Jairus? Getting sidetracked. Notice it says a woman who had hemorrhage for 12 years, had endured much at the hands of many physicians, and spent all that she had was not helped at all, but rather had gone and gotten worse. Okay, now to understand the background, turn back just a couple of chapters, if you would, to chapter 3. And notice what it says in verse 10. It says, for he healed many with the results that all those who had afflictions pressed about in order to touch him. So probably she heard about this, right? All I need to do is just touch him. That's all I need to do. Now, what's important is, what does the Leviticus 15 tell you? If she has the issue of blood, is she unclean?
Yes.
Is she supposed to be at a social gathering?
No.
Does that explain why she slips up behind him to touch him? Do you think maybe she had on a little bit of a disguise? Where people aren't going to see her? But does she believe that he can heal her? Okay, so while this is going on, you're over here, Jairus. Or how concerned are you about this woman? Think about it.
Come on, let's move on.
And let's move on, exactly. That's why I said a divine delay. So here you have this distinctive touch. So he obviously touches his cloak. 28, this is back in Mark 5. For she thought, if I just touch his garments, I shall get well. And immediately the flow of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. She knew it instantly. Now what do you think about it? You look at it now, and you look at these two things, and you think about it. Jesus makes an interesting statement. Notice, does he know that power is left? Okay, because no power, I think it's important in why he asked this question. It's not the magical touch. Jesus heals. It's not just because you touch a garment or you do any of that kind of stuff. Healing power comes from Jesus. He willingly did it. But he wants to make a correction, and that's why he wants to show it. But think about three of the disciples. I've been overseas, and if you've been to any of the large cities overseas, I mean, you and I like space in America. You don't get space when you go over to these places. I mean, there's wall-to-wall mass humanity, and everybody is touching you and bumping you everywhere. And you try to back up, and you're just hitting people. You can't get away. There's just so many people. That's what you have here. So notice what he didn't ask. You know, Jesus in 30, immediately Jesus perceived in himself that power proceeded from him and had gone forth, turned around to the crowd and said, who touched my garments? Now when I was in, Chennai and stuff, when you're talking about millions of people, I can just imagine at that airport saying, who touched me? And what do you think everybody around is going to look at you? You idiot. You probably just got touched by 20 different people. Why does Jesus want to know that?
She wants him.
He wants a personal relationship with the woman to recognize it's more than just physical healing, you need spiritual healing. And notice, if you were the disciples, what would you say? Notice, I think we would have responded just like they did in verse 31. His disciples said, you see the multitude pressing on you, and you're asking, who touched you? Who hadn't touched you? Everybody's trying to get to you. Now I want you to think about it. Remember, you're the group over here. You just got healed. You just got caught. How many of you want to say it was me? Think about it. He's asking you. Does that mean he's going to unheal me? When you think about it, that's an interesting question. Who touched me? And I think when you look at it, what she does, he looked around, he sees the woman. Obviously, the word there is penetration. Penetration. The woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came down and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Now think about it. If she tells him the whole truth in front of everybody, does that make Jesus unclean? Was she unclean? Did she touch him? What about the multitude around? She tells the whole truth. Notice the next statement. And think about it. Over here, Jairus' daughter, by the way, are you getting a little impatient over here? Notice what it says. He says to her, daughter. Notice there's now a different relationship that you have. Your faith has made you well. Notice what made her well? Her faith, not just because she touched his garment. Your faith is what made you well. And notice it says, go in peace and be healed of your affliction. It's going to be an eternal, talk about humanly speaking on the earth, healing. So you think about it, here you have it. Remember, he's actually going to Jairus' daughter's house, right? And who's sick at the house? The daughter. And what does he just tell this one? Daughter, you're healed. You think about it, I think it's interesting when you look at it. What is Jesus trying to teach me about being sidetracked? Do any of you ever feel like Jesus gets sidetracked in your life? He has your attention and then all of a sudden something happens. And it's almost like he has all his attention on other people, which, by the way, should he not have attention on this woman? Yes. He should. She's had an issue of blood how long? How old is Jairus' daughter?
12 years.
Okay. By the way, if it was 12 years, Jesus' public ministry and his healing ministry didn't start. She had that problem before he ever started his public ministry. Could he have healed her? Yes, but that wasn't the start of his public ministry. You think about it. Am I like the woman and I turn to Jesus when everything else fails? How many of us wait until I've gone through all my resources and have done everything? Usually we use the statement, when all else fails, right. Notice she hears it, he's here, and she has faith to go. And she touches it. Would I have come forth and told the whole truth? Or would I tried to slip off? He knows he's been touched, but he doesn't know who. I touched him in the back. He didn't see me, I'm going to sneak off. How many of us have God done things for us, but we do not give a public testimony of what he's done for us? We slip off. So think about it. You have the different ones that you had. You remember your first one was his divine placement. You're talking about the word of faith. Just speak the word, Jesus, and it's healed. Just the words. Here you have the work. Just reaching out and touching. Let's look at the last one. I think it's interesting that you have the divine delay. So Jairus' daughter, you're going and you stop and you take this much time. And notice what happens in the very next verse. And while he was still speaking, they came from the house of the synagogue official saying, your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher anymore? How you all feeling over here? How of you are mad at this lady over here? Go back to John 11. What did Mary and Martha both say to Jesus? Jesus, if you hadn't delayed, if you had come, my brother would what? Still be alive. It was a divine delay then as well. Because he was going to raise him, but also they believed the Spirit hovered for a while and he was showing them that wasn't the case. So think about it. Here you have it. So notice what happens then. If you're Jesus, notice what he does in verse 36. Don't trouble him anymore, she's dead. Jesus overheard what was being spoken, said to the synagogue leader, and this is present imperative, so these are two commands over and over again. Notice what he says, do not be afraid any longer. What was he afraid of? He was going to die. Taking too long. Notice the second thing, only believe. Keep believing. Alright? Don't worry, she's gone. Don't worry, believe. Believe what? She's dead. Did he believe she could heal, that he could heal her beforehand? Do you believe he can heal now? I think sometimes we think he could have done it here, but hey, the situation's much worse in my life now. You delayed, God. It's too far gone. You can't help anymore. And that's where they're at. Notice what he does then in verse 37. When you look at it, you have witnesses. He came, no one was allowed except Peter, James, and John. Why would you take 3 people? To have a witness in the Old Testament, you need how many? Who was at the transfiguration that could say they truly saw Jesus in all his glory? Peter, James, and John. So he has witnesses. Notice the weeping and mourning, and this it came about the house of the synagogue official. Behold, a commotion, people loudly weeping and wailing. Okay, they would pay for people to come and do this. I can't imagine paying money. So notice this would have to be a time frame, because they wouldn't come until the death occurred. So you would pay people to come and wail and do all this. I can't imagine being professional mourners and somebody's, I just can't imagine that. But anyway, that was what they did. And there had to be obviously quite a commotion. Are you going to see it from a distance? Are you going to hear it? If you're Jairus, what is that telling you?
She's already dead.
But Jesus said what?
Hang on. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to believe.
Okay? What your eyes are telling you is one thing. What your ears are telling you is one thing. But what I am telling you is something else. Are you going to believe what I say? Or are you going to believe what you see and what you hear? And I think it's oftentimes, why did God have divine delay? So let's look at it. Let's keep going a little bit further. It's interesting what he does. And so notice 39, he enters. Remember they enter there. Why make a commotion? The child is not dead, just asleep. Do you think they know what death looks like? Why did he use the word sleep? Obviously, because he knows it's temporary, it can be arrested, it can be resuscitated. Same thing in 1 Corinthians 11, when believers have died, often is used of sleep, because this is not the end. We are going to have be resurrected and raised. Now, how would you respond if you were in that house? You know what death looks like. You're telling me they're asleep? No, not hardly. But it's interesting what the next thing says. They began laughing at him, but what does it say then? Putting them out. I wish they changed the word. You know what that word is? It's the exact same word that's used when Jesus cast out demons, and the same word that's used when Jesus cast out the money changers in the temple. You all don't believe? Get out of here. That's amazing when you think about it. Same word, everything's being said. Notice what he says then. He took about the child's father, mother, and his 3 companions. They enter the room where the child was. Everybody else, get out. And notice what he says then. Obviously taking the child by hand. He's speaking in Arabic. And basically, little girl, I say to you, rise. The emphasis is on the word I, because he is God, and he says, rise. And she does. He kept telling Jairus what? Believe. What about the mother? You think about it. What took you so long to get here? Why was he healing this lady over here? A lot of things could have happened. Notice in 42, immediately the girl arose and began to walk, for she was 12 years old. And immediately they were completely astonished. He gave them strict orders that no one should know about this, and to give her something to eat. Obviously, at that point, she needed nourishment to continue. Why did he not want people to be told? Because people would come to him for what?
Wrong reason.
Only for physical things and not for spiritual things. So when you think about it, when you look back through these 3 different ones, when you look at it, what is Jesus trying to teach me about the sidetracks? Is it a sidetrack, or does he have a divine plan? Was he going to heal both? We simply need to do what? Believe. Am I like the woman? I do not turn to Jesus when everything else fails. Obviously, in her case, he wasn't available 12 years earlier, and just started his public ministry, been going for a while. Would I come forth and tell the truth? I think it's an interesting question. What about the Jewish leader, the centurion? Would I be like the Jewish leaders? He deserves it? Or, hey, I don't even deserve you to come into my house. You can speak it and it'll happen. I think it's some questions we can ask. So again, the words of Jesus, do I have the faith to believe them? Do I have the walk of faith? Can you imagine how long a walk that would have to be to lead Jesus to your daughter who's dead and yet believe that he can raise her? I think it'd been interesting and a long, hard walk. And again, like I said, these are three individuals, and I'm looking forward to meeting them one day. How about you? We're going to find out what their real names are. We'll even find out who the two, the slave and the little girl are.
We'd love for you to come and visit with us and fellowship with us. We're located at 8263 North Owasso Expressway, which is on the east side of Highway 169 North, between 76th and 86th Street North. We have coffee and fellowship from 8:30 to 9 Sundays, followed by Sunday school for all ages from 9 to 9:45, and our Sunday morning worship service is from 10 to 11. We likewise have a Wednesday night service for all ages from 7 to 8. Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times, and in every way the Lord be with you all the time.